Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being with us for this Working with French information session. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. We are really happy to be with us today to talk about the tax rebate for international production, which is now granted with a 10% bonus connected with the VFX spends. Let me simply tell you that we're going to be here with a lot of people today, and without further ado, let me introduce you to our friends and colleagues from the CNC, the National Center for Cinema. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stefan, and hi everyone. My name is Vincent Florent. I'm Director of Digital for the CNC, and Mathieu Fournet is here as well. Mathieu?
Oui, bonsoir. Hello everybody. So my name is Mathieu. I'm the head of international at CNC.
So as Stefan told you, we're here to talk about the tax rebate for international production and explain how the new bonus for VFX works. It has been voted by members of the French Parliament, and it allows you to get up to 40% tax rebate on all eligible expenses. So it's a 10% VFX bonus for specific works which we'll cover. Film France, of course, is dedicated to helping producers shoot and produce in France. So I will let them cover in details the expenses, the process to benefit from this. But I just wanted to, in very quick introduction, point how important this topic is for us, and especially right now, and put this in perspective with all what we've been through with the COVID-19 crisis. Of course, France has always been a great land for shooting movies, and maybe not going back up to Georges Méliès, a great land for VFX. And the VFX bonus is a way to put the light on the great talents that we have, the great VFX industry. And we're really strongly dedicated to making this top-tier international level VFX industry. So of course, France has great landscapes. Film France database lists over 22,000 shooting sets. It has a unique history and culture. It has technical expertise for VFX, for animation, for post-production. And of course, last but not least, it has great incentives with the tax rebate for international production. It was created in 2009 and re-evaluated in 2016 to keep it relevant in a strong competitive landscape. We are happy to see that in those 10, 11 years, it has attracted over 300 projects in cinema or audiovisual, in a great variety of genres and formats. So we have super production feature films like The Last Duel from Ridley Scott, The French Dispatch by Wes Anderson, which was entirely shot in Angoulême, and whose producer Octavia Pessel talked about last year on the actual beach from the CNC in Cannes last year. We have also great expertise in VFX used in movies like Ford versus Ferrari from James Mangold. And of course, it's also for animation, this tax incentive with productions like Pets 2 and Sing 2 upcoming next summer, both from Illumination MacGuff. So overall, the impact has been very strong, both for France and for producers. It's a massive way of creating jobs, over 15,000 jobs created, over 500 million euros additional spending. And we know it has a stronger influence on international tourism, which we very much need and will need after this crisis. So really, of course, with what we've been through, it only reinforces our wish to attract international production. The CNC is also aggressively investing through levies in the VFX, the animation industry, the technical industries, the studios, and this is all something that works together with the tax incentive. So enough said. We're here to talk about that specific 10% bonus, which we'll cover, and I let now Mathieu talk about the other aspects of our international policy.
Yeah, thank you, Vincent. Just very briefly, because the tax rebate is one way of working for France, working in France, but international relationship and international has always been at the heart of the industry in France. And you have actually two ways of working with France. You can work through the tax rebate that Vincent was presenting, but you can also work through co-production. And co-production has been at the heart of French industry for a very long time. We have 58 bilateral co-production agreements with 57 different countries, and just last year 40% of all certified films in France were actually co-productions, international co-productions with 48 different countries. This co-production system allows you to tap into public funding, TV, Eurimage, which is another tool for financing international co-production at a European level, and Eurimage has also expanded to Canada recently. And we have at CNC various schemes in terms of public funding for international co-production. And we know that there is very often some questions whether the tax rebate and co-production can work together, and it cannot work together. It's just two different paths and two different ways to work with France, either co-production or the tax rebate. So I won't be much longer than that. We, of course, can answer any questions. And we have had a few panels on international co-production during the Cannes virtual film market, and we will have another one tomorrow. So do not hesitate to be in touch with us regarding this. But I think the topic tonight is the 10% VFX bonus. So I think we should move to the core of the presentation right now.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. So yes, you're totally true. Let's talk about the tax rebate. But first of all, maybe let's talk about the French situation. So let me introduce you to my colleague, Matthew Parker, who's one of our tax rebate experts and film commissioner as well. And maybe just one technical point before Matthew is starting. I have another colleague whose name is Jérémy Dubernay, which is currently answering to all your questions that you can ask through the Q&A box, which is on the bottom of your screen. Please do not use the commentary box, which I think is not open on this screen, but who knows? No question will be answered in the other box. Only the Q&A box will be used. So please use this one. Drop your question and we'll answer to them during the presentation or during the Q&A that will come just after it. So Matthew, first question, what is the situation in France nowadays?
Thank you, Stéphane. Okay, so the current situation in France is that since the beginning of May, film permits are once again being issued and shoots are allowed to go ahead. As part of the response to the crisis, a temporary indemnity fund has been set up by the Ministry of Culture and the CNC to support French production and to help them adapt to new sanitary situation. Clear guidelines are available to producers and filmmakers to ensure compliance with new safety rules. Restrictions on travel to France from neighboring European countries have now been lifted. For the Americas, we are working successfully to obtain waivers from the French government in order to allow productions to enter the territory. As borders reopen, productions are rescheduling their shoots and returning to France. As proof, we currently have a large British crew who are able to travel to the overseas territory of Guadeloupe last week in order to prep for their shoot in July. And feedback from productions already shooting is extremely positive. Last but not least, we're pleased to announce that as of Monday this week, cinemas in France were allowed to reopen. So it's safe to say that the French film industry is back up and running.
Thank you very much, Matthew. So let's talk about the trip. I think you have a presentation to show us, Matthew.
I certainly do. Just bear with me and I'll get the presentation up on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to sort of go through the main key points for the tax rebate for international production. First of all, we are the National Film Commission for France. We facilitate shoots and post-production throughout the country, as well as rely on an extensive network of 32 regional film commissions spread out throughout mainland France and overseas territories throughout the world. We also provide expertise on the tax rebate for international productions. Most importantly, we assess a project's eligibility for the trip. So we are your one-stop shop. That means we provide you with information about locations, filming regulations, technical facilities, line producers. We help productions set up their shoots in France. Probably what's most applicable to you, though, in this session is the tax rebate. So the tax rebate, well, first of all, it's generous. Why is it generous? Well, you can get up to 30% on your eligible expenses in tax rebate, and now up to 40% with a VFX-related bonus, which I'll go into in more detail later on. The trip is simple. There's no red tape. You simply need to come with a deal memo, a script, and a first estimate of your budget in order to apply. It's reliable. The production service company collects the trip every year from the services, and it's fast. That means you can start spending the day you send your application to the CNC, and then you will receive provisional qualification within 3 weeks. So what kind of projects can qualify? Well, all formats, all scripted formats are eligible. The only types of projects that are excluded are documentaries and commercials. What about criteria for accessing the trip? Well, you need to work with a French-based production service company. I'll elaborate on that in the next slide. But for live action projects, you need a minimum of 5 days shooting in France. Obviously, there is no minimum filming required for animation and VFX works. The cultural test, sorry, I forgot to say you have to spend a minimum of 250,000 euros. That's or 50% of your overall budget, whichever is the lowest. And you have to pass a cultural test, including dramatic content. This is quite easy to pass. For example, we've had many other, a wide range of films eligible for the trip, such as Mission Impossible, The Hunger Games, The Minions, and in VFX, we've had Blade Runner 2049, American Gods, or The Kingsman. How do you access the trip? Well, it's available through a company that is subject to corporate tax, income tax in France. They act as a production services company for you, the foreign producer, and they receive the trip through their yearly tax return. Now, that can be an existing company, it can be a subsidiary of the foreign production, or a special purpose vehicle, an SPV. We have on the Film France website an online production service company database, which is very useful because There are hundreds of professionals in France working regularly with the trip who are listed on there across a wide range of projects and genres and in a variety of languages. So in a few words, here is the trip timeline. You can come any time of year and you can get an answer within 3 weeks on your eligibility. What do you do first? You request provisional qualification from the CNC. That's all done digitally for now. That includes minimal formalities. You just come with a script, a deal memo, and a first budget, as I mentioned earlier. As soon as you send the application, the PSC can start spending. Greenlit projects then get the money every year from the French tax authorities through that PSC. At the end of the project, the PSC requests a final qualification from the CNC up to 2 years after the last French expense was made. The CNC then issues final qualifications within a matter of weeks. What is eligible? Well, salaries, wages of European writers and actors. These expenses are capped at the daily minimum amount as agreed by unions, but salaries paid for French or European direction and production staff do not have a cap applied to them. Expenditures for technical goods and services based in France, including VFX, animation, post-production facilities, the rental of locations and constructing sets, accommodation, catering, travel, transport of materials, globally speaking, the wide range of expenses that you will incur when you're filming in France. How much do you get? Well, the cap is 30 million euros of tax rebate per project, which means you would have to spend up to 100 million euros in eligible expenses. So if you have a project that enormous, you'd be very welcome to come to France. Globally speaking, you get the 30% tax rebate on eligible expenses, but now, as of this year, you also get, or you can get a 40% tax rebate on eligible expenses with a 10% VFX bonus. So let me go into a bit more detail about this new bonus. Well, it's for fiction projects, including a substantial amount of VFX, so VFX intensive projects. They need to spend more than 2 million euros in eligible VFX related expenses. So what is VFX intensive? Well, that is 15% of the shots or 1.5 shot per minute on the whole project, which must include VFX. This isn't very hard to reach. What are VFX related spends? Well, expenses have to be carried out by a French service provider, and they need to be related to the digital processing of shots. In short, the bill of the French VFX vendors and all expenditures that occur during the filming and that are directly linked to the VFX process. So to summarize, this new 10% VFX related tax rebate bonus. To qualify, you need to be a live action fiction film. Animation projects do not qualify. Include a substantial amount of digital visual effects. Include 2 million euros of eligible expenses relating to the digital processing of shots, and pass a test. If French expenditure is principally related to digital visual effects, the VFX test will be used. If it's related mainly to non-VFX expenditures, it has to pass the live action test and shoot for at least 5 days in France. Green screen also counts in terms of filming. So which kind of projects can get the VFX project? Well, as you can see here, we have a wide range of projects that have come to France, and no doubt these sorts of projects would benefit in the future from this 10% bonus. Here is a selection of recent projects that have come to France and made good use of the tax rebate. And finally, here are your contacts for any VFX or tax rebate related questions. We don't normally look quite that scary in real life, so please do come and ask us your questions. We'd be very happy to talk to you and answer any questions you may have. So thank you very much. Our email address is rebate@filmfrance.net, so don't hesitate to come and talk to us.
Thank you very much, Matthew. So we're starting to have questions. And of course, what Matthew said, Matthew, I cannot see you anymore. Oh, welcome back. What Matthew said is that we are totally available for all your questions, even in the next hours, because we're going to be staying online on the Talk application. And even tomorrow or the day after, or in one week or 1 month, we are totally open. We are here to give you all the information you need to use the tax rebate for international production. As we were saying at the beginning, we are your one-stop shop for everything you need in France, including this tax rebate. So let's have maybe 5 minutes Q&A. So we'll have a way to go a little bit deeper in these questions. So the first question I can see is, it's about the above the line, and the below the line that is not French. The question is there a cap on non-residents? Mathieu, maybe you would like to answer to this.
Yes, so as I outlined earlier, the only a cap, or the cap that applies is for your above the line talent. So that includes actors and writers. The cap is at sort of a daily minimum amount, which is agreed by unions. But so you can only get the tax rebate back on that daily amount. Otherwise, all other salaries for cast and crew on the shoot are not capped. So you can get 30% back on the full salary amount.
What can be interesting when you're talking about the residents or the non-residents in the question is that, and I think Matthew is in the right place to talk about it, is the question of the British citizen. Matthew, are they still qualifying in the eligible plans or not?
We still qualify, thankfully. Yes. Despite turning our backs on the wonderful thing that is the European Union, we are still European in the eyes of eligible expenditure. So not only does that help for these sorts of matters concerning salaries and residents and non-residents, but it also helps in terms of points that you can gain when you're applying. For example, you can gain points if you employ European staff on your crew, and British obviously is included in that.
Mm-hmm. And this works as well for the dramatic content. I mean, the dramatic content, correct me if I'm wrong, is French or European. It means that's correct. The subject could be, for example, French or European.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, it's quite easy to gain points throughout the 3 different sections on the scale that we use. And that's mainly because there is quite a wide remit. You can gain points for having producer, director, screenwriter, cinematographer who is French or European. And that includes the whole continent of Europe, not just the European Union. So that's very easy to gather points.
And there was another question earlier that was about the production service company, the French partner that the non-French company has to work with. Really, can you give just a little bit of idea of what kind of companies the production service company can be, Matthew, please?
They can be a wide range of companies as long as they are paying their income tax in France. So that's the sort of legal basic requirement for this company, which is why I mentioned earlier that you can create a subsidiary of your production if you find that that's easier for you for a particular project. As long as they are subject to French income tax, then they can be your production service company, because they will collect the rebate on your behalf through their yearly tax returns, which will then be transferred back to the foreign producer.
Thank you very much. Another question arrived. Are American crew and talent qualified the same as French, as long as they are working on French soil?
Well, in terms of the applying for the trip, they wouldn't gain points for the eligibility, but they, yes, I mean, when you're employing, we incentivize obviously productions to work with French crews and French talents. I mean, it tends to be easier that way anyway. So when they come, your production service company will engage these crews and talents for you. Then the salaries of the French or European crew that goes through that company and are employed for the French portion of that shoot will be eligible expenses for the tax rebate.
This is very important. The eligible spend is a spend by the French production company, which means that if those people are paid by the US company, as an example, it's not eligible, of course. But if some people are paid by the French company, the spend can be eligible, but they have to be paid in France in the French way.
Yeah, through the French production service company, always through them.
Yeah, always through them. There's a question from India, and there's the producer who's asking how can you get connected to find co-production. Really, what I would say is that you are in the perfect right place. The Marché du Film de Cannes is really the place where you will find partners. Concerning the kind of project that we're talking about right now, we have a list of line producers of production service companies, which is online on our filmfrance.net website. So if you want to shoot a film via the tax rebate that we're talking about now, please use this list to find the right partner. But more generally speaking, concerning the co-production, really try to connect I think around you in the Marché du Film de Cannes, you have a lot of opportunities to meet people and to find French producers that will be really happy to work with you. So maybe it's time to go a little bit deeper in this topic and to meet two prominent French professionals who are with us today. So please let me introduce you, gentlemen. Can you please put your camera on? May I introduce you to John Bernard and Lawrence Herman, who are with us today. Thank you very much for being with us. Lawrence, please put your microphone on. Thank you very much. So welcome. And my first question is very simple and goes to both of you. Who are you? John, can you start, please?
Well, good evening, everybody. My name's John Bernard. I'm a line producer who works here in France. You'll probably gather from my accent, I'm not French. I'm actually English, but I've embraced very much being here in France for many, many years now. I have a production service company specializing in feature films, animation, and also doing television series. Work very closely with Film France, who've done an incredibly fantastic job in bringing France up to speed and being sort of a proper member of the world of trips and rebates and everything. And obviously today we're here to talk about bonus, this additional 10%, which is key. And I have worked closely with Lawrence indeed on the film Le Mans recently. And so Lawrence, over to you.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Laurent Starman. I am the VFX supervisor and founder at The Art VFX. We are a French VFX boutique specialized in feature film. We are based in Paris, and in the last 10 years, we have worked on many French and international projects like X-Men First Class, Smurfs 2, Renegades, and more recently, as John said, Ford versus Ferrari.
So you said it already, you both worked on Ford versus Ferrari. So my first question would be, how did it start? What led the production to choose France? John, maybe I think something tells me that you were the first contact.
Well, they were very keen from a physical production point of view to come over to France and film a couple of days here, which turned out to be more, which obviously enabled them to become eligible for the French rebate at 30% on physical production. We shot the period arrival in Le Mans of the car, of the coach, and we also did quite a lot of plate shooting around the actual circuit itself, which obviously today is massively different from what it was in those days. But you know, that's what Lawrence did, with a lot of plate shooting and working with the team over in America. And I think it was what was interesting on that is that it was really the first time for me that a physical production generated as a consequence of real interest in some French visual effects. And I think part of the model of what we did there is very much part of the essence and the DNA of why we're here today with the bonus on visual effects. Because I think visual effects are now such an important part, well, they've always been an important part, but even more so in terms of the financial structures which are put together. And indeed, I'll touch briefly on that. I mean, I've just done the last duel with Ridley Scott. The filming has been delayed while we go through the COVID moment. We had finished shooting in France, but they were moving to Ireland to carry on. We are looking at the possibility that now we have this additional bonus, we might be starting to look at some additional visual effects being done in the visual effects world here. So they are now becoming more and more important, the connection between the two, particularly financially, in the way we would set up films in the future. Yes.
Interesting. You've been from the past to the future. Big jump. So just let's go back to the past again. And Lawrence, how did you get aboard Ford versus Ferrari?
We jumped on the movie in 2 times. The first time is, well, thanks to my background and my network, sometimes international VFX producers or supervisors call me to help them gathering data in France while they are shooting or not. For example, on Smurfs 2 a few years ago, production asked me to be the 3rd VFX supervisor on set, and asked me also to bring a team of data wranglers. Then a few years ago also, we have help on Godzilla, and the mission was to shoot planes at Le Bourget for photogrammetry purpose. And it was the same process on Ford versus Ferrari. First, the VFX producer called me in summer 2018 to shoot cars at Le Mans Classic race for references and photogrammetry only. It was the first contact with the production, and we were not supposed to do any VFX shot at the moment. Finally, a few months later, the production called me back to jump on the movie, and we have started with few shots, 30 shots. I think we did a good job, apparently, because they asked us for 50 more shots. And finally, we ended up with 120 shots. So it's, yeah, we jump on the movie on 2 times. And we had to prove them that we were reliable and flexible, and that we can give them the quality they were expecting.
How did it work? Did you have to make another paperwork, or did you simply connect with John?
Absolutely not. I mean, the rebate was started with John for the shooting. So they already had the 30% for the visual effects. And I mean, the case was open, and we just have to start the work. Everything was done.
Is it the same on your side, John? Is it? Did you have to do anything?
No, I have to say it's pretty seamless. Once everything is set up and it's actually happening, as and when more expenditure comes in, you just add it into the kitty, and at the end of the year, I mean, obviously we are structured on an annual basis. You know, our spend has to be from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. And if it goes beyond that, then it slips into another year, which takes another set of processes to go through. But to bring visual effects into a physical production situation, or indeed today to perhaps even incorporate what has already been done as physical production and bring that into a new visual effects bonus system is completely seamless. Yeah.
And maybe just a few words about the tests, because I know you worked on a lot of made projects. So I think you made a lot of cultural tests. And first example for Ford versus Ferrari, was the test hard to reach? Was the criteria hard to reach?
Culturally, the way it's been set up here in France, and that program, that first hurdle you have to get across in order to make the application and move further down that road is very, very broad. I mean, I'll probably, the best case of giving an idea of how broad it actually is that Hunger Games is extremely eligible. And it wasn't eligible because of an American, a UK director or UK producers or anything else. It was eligible because the subject matter specifically never mentions any other country, and therefore by the fact that it is anonymous, makes it potentially European and therefore eligible. So that's the secret in that process. Le Mans is one of the most iconic and epic motorsport events to take place, and it's in France. So there was never going to be a problem with that. And obviously Ferrari being a European entity, that is only extra point. So it's broad in the sense that it's not just French, it's also European. And as Matt was saying earlier on, in terms of the eligibility, the UK, us Brits, we are still deemed to be European in that sense, yes.
So let's go back to the VFX side. So Lawrence, if I understood well, you had to resize your team because you started for only a few shots, and then you go bigger and bigger. Was it easy to bring all this crew together?
Well, at the beginning, we didn't expect to work on so many shots, but really the company was built and sized to scale easily. We have good relation with a French school. I have a strong network thanks to my position of the French section of the Visual Effects Society. And French schools are really solid, and a lot of artists working for international vendors are coming from France. For example, I mean, the last VFX Oscar winner is French, Guillaume Rocheron. So finding artists is not an issue, but you need to have a strong pipeline to handle a lot of new shots and to upscale easily. This is fundamental for us. I mean, the goal for us and the art is to be flexible and reliable, as I said. And well, finding artists is not an issue in France. We have the best schools, and I mean, the important thing is to understand that the artist wages in France are not so high, so we can be really competitive, and we can adapt and meet the expectation of our client. So yeah, no issue, really.
I mean, I would agree with Lawrence on that. And in fact, I think one of the main reasons why we were able to get the extra bonus is because there has been a massive exodus of incredible French talent over to either the UK or to America in recent years. And indeed, doing these tax credits has enabled these people to stay here because the work is now coming back here. So certainly from a technical point of view and from a talent point of view, I don't think there's ever been a question that France is right up there with the very best in the world. It's just getting the producers and the finance people to agree that it's viable. And this is why this 10% is so key.
So maybe the final question, because before we can take some questions from the audience, what are your expectations to both of you? What kind of project do you think this new 10% VFX bonus will attract in France or will fit with?
Well, of course, we want to work on more projects, more ambitious projects with a lot of VFX. Both of us. That is also why we have worked at the art to be TPN approved. For TPN is the Trusted Partner Network Content Security Program. It's a joint venture between the MPAA and the CDSA. And if you want to work with big studios like Marvel, Disney, Fox, you need to be qualified. And it's a long process, but you need it. And it proves that your facility and infrastructure is secure and safe. So yeah, we want to work on bigger projects with more ambitious VFX.
And you, John, do you think this is going to be a game changer concerning the project that you are used to work with?
I mean, yes, it is going to be a game changer, but also we have to be aware that the game is also changing in other places. I've noticed other countries have also boosted their tax credits to you know, as interesting levels as we are. But no, I think the thing is that there is fundamentally, to use a French expression, there's a savoir-faire here, which we will continue to embrace and use and employ, and will continue to be part of making great movies here in France, and great television shows and series and what have you. It's the money now is getting much more interesting to be in France, and that in the business of making movies internationally, it's the business. Unfortunately, we're not a septième art in the world we work in, so we have to be very aware of that. But I think that, you know, the COVID world is a completely separate conversation to be having. This is not the time and place to be having it. But it is, funnily enough, it has almost created an environment where to work separately from people, why we can be doing visual effects here in France where somebody else is working somewhere else. But actually, it's that doctrine is now starting to come into our business even more so than it was before. And I think that's also going to help open doors for us and people like Lawrence and myself. Yes.
Maybe we're going to start to answer some questions. And because, John, I know that you have a very important call.
I've got a call in minutes, yes.
Yeah, just give us maybe 3 minutes. There's one question, and I know that this is the kind of question that you are often asked, is about the wages that are not so high, but the social charges. What about the French social charges? I mean, you know, the social contributions.
Yes, social charges in France. They are reassuringly expensive. Yes, they are there, and they are an integral part of what is part of the payroll here in France. But it's important to know that the tax, the rebate is applicable not only to the fringes but also to the salary. So overall, I think in today's world, when I look at an international market, I compare it with Los Angeles, or New York, or London, and indeed often with even now with Italy and then Germany, I think the salaries here are pretty much on par. I think we pretty much all leveled off. But it is essential that everybody understands that the rebate is only applicable to the payroll generated by the French service company. Any other salaries paid outside that company in France, even some of the French ones, are not eligible. So yes, there's a balance to be done, but there's also a balance to be done in terms of the technical people and the people who need to be part of your show. You know, sometimes it's essential that you have some overseas people involved in the show, particularly in the Anglo-Saxon world, which my business is about. Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time your crews are mixed between people coming from overseas and local crews. You know exactly how to combine both know-how.
We have a very diversified collection of crew. We have, I mean, Malasha, I had Italians, French, English, Canadians, and Americans all on the same set. Absolutely. And I think that's what makes it interesting as well. It's what brings the dynamics to some of the shows which we get involved in. Yeah, be them small or big. Yeah, absolutely. To be embraced.
I think now I know that your call is very important, and I really wanted to thank.
Important. This is important. This is important. This is not what we're talking about here. It's very important. But no, I have an obligation to somebody who needs some answers. So I will get on the phone with him.
So thank you very much, John, and see you soon. Maybe not on a screen, but maybe in real life. So Thank you very much, John. So Laurence, now you're alone. So you're going to talk about...
Yeah.
There's a question that maybe my colleague Matthew will be able to answer to. Is this a VFX fund or is it a rebate? Matthew?
It's a rebate. It's the same rebate as we have known in France for the last 10 years. So that is to say that all projects eligible for the trip will get 30% in tax rebate. But those projects that decide they want to spend heavily in VFX in France, that is more than 2 million euros in eligible spends, they will get that 10% bonus. So that means that there will be a 40% tax rebate for those projects, and that covers all eligible expenses.
And the other question I'm going to answer to it. The question is, can a production claim by just getting the VFX work done in France? And the answer is yes, a big yes. Of course, we talked a lot about combined works between live action and VFX, but just remember that the VFX, the French tax rebate is totally open to VFX only works. And a lot of French VFX companies worked on VFX projects which were only VFX projects. I just wanted to give you an example. Twin Peaks, the David Lynch series, was the VFX were made in France with the tax rebate. And this is, of course, there was not one single day of shooting for this project, but all the VFX were made in France. We have a special test for the VFX, which is totally dedicated to VFX and which gives the opportunity to use what we call undefined characters or undefined places, such as, I don't know, planets or, you know, monsters or creatures from outer space. And those all give the points. And this is the reason why Twin Peaks or Blade Runner 2049 were qualified for the tax rebate. So the answer is yes, totally. You can do 100% VFX projects in France. And now maybe Laurence, you want to add something to this? Maybe you had some experience, I don't know.
We don't have any particular experience at the yard. Most of the projects we have done were connected to a shoot. We are actually working on a TV show from US. Actually, we have started the work, and we'll see if we reach the minimum spend. But yeah, I don't have any particular experience unconnected with a shooting. I mean, directly with VFX work. But I know that it's not an issue, and we can start, and any project can come only for VFX work. As you said, one of the main grid eligible principle is the anonymous point for the character and also for the country or the city. If it's unnamed, it could be everywhere, and it could be a European, so it's eligible, and I think it's a great point.
And the last question from the same person was about financing in France, and this is the same answer. Yes, there are some financing solutions in France. A lot of production service companies work with them, and in other words, they find the money in France. And in order that their foreign client doesn't have to give the money before, and but of course, money has a price. I mean, this is the other thing. But just be sure, I think you can remember the figures that Vincent and Mathieu gave at the beginning of the talk. French industry is a big industry, and of course, all those companies are working with financing companies to find the money in order to work. So really, you can, if you use it, if you need it, you really have to be, you don't have to worry about financing. Oh, Vincent, there's a question for you. You have to smile.
Yeah, I've seen that. I try to do my best.
But maybe you have a comment about what we are just saying, because I didn't hear you since the beginning.
No, I think you explained it perfectly. That it applies to all kind of productions. So it's really either the regular tax rebate at 30%, or with the bonus of 40% for the whole project, which is very important, provided that you spend over 2 million euros. But it's really for all kind of productions. I've seen that you've explained that, and John and Lawrence explained that it's a quite simple process actually, and that producers are really guided through that thanks to the Film France team. So yeah, I hope everything has been clear right now. I've seen that there's another question regarding women in cinema, and the levy created by CNC to favor film teams. Well, of course, this is an important subject, and I think that this panel has not shown a great diversity. So that's a good note for next year's. The previous one on the Cannes Beach was more diverse in terms of genre and profiles, but it's really something that is important for the CNC. We're considering applying more parity criteria on the domestic levies, but there is no criteria on the tax rebate for international production, because it's not the same purpose. The purpose here is to attract international production, and we are working on the domestic levies to change the game in terms of parity with the cultural policy.
Thank you very much. There was a question, but maybe it has been answered by our colleague Jeremy about animation. And this is something that we have to say. Yes, animation doesn't qualify for the 10% bonus. It's only for live action film with heavy VFX work on them. I say heavy, but just take a little look at it. To be considered as VFX intensive, you have to have 15% of the shots of the whole film, which means that, or 1.5 shot per minute, which means that if you take a 100-minute film, it's only 150 shots. And Lawrence, can you just remember us how many shots you did on Ford versus Ferrari?
We did 120 shots.
Yeah, and it was not the whole VFX work on it, I guess.
No, of course not. Of course not. It was maybe 20%.
So the idea of VFX intensive is quite low, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're going slowly towards the end of this panel. Maybe there are some questions which are left. I cannot see them. Yeah, I guess we're good. So you have only 30 seconds to drop your last questions. Otherwise, you're going to be leaving. So thank you very much to all of you and to all our speakers here.
Thanks a lot.
Next year, it's a real promise. We'll have some women on the screen, but the other promise is that next year we'll be in Cannes, we'll be in the real life, we'll be with you face to face, and really, we are not going to be on screen like this next year. I'm crossing my fingers. So thanks a lot, all of you, and see you soon. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.